together with Dinis Guarda, CEO from zstudium and professor at the Groupe INSEEC, University of Monaco. In the line with my interviews on the state of the digital workplace organization, digital workplace adoption in the UK. But can you please introduce yourself firstly more in depth?
Hello. So as you mentioned, I'm Dinis Guarda. I'm founder and CEO of Studium, and we publish, I think the most well-known is intelligenthq.com, and we publish as well other websites like openbusinesscouncil.org, tradersdna.com, and edgethink.com. So these are some of our websites, portals. What we do is we target 3 areas of business. One part is digital publishing, and we publish targeting long-tail audiences, specialized mostly in business and specializing areas like B2B, business transformation, digital transformation, of course, social enterprise, and the areas of how digital is transforming finance and fintech. I'm very involved in fintech as well and digital transformation on a personal level. I teach and coordinate the master in digital, an MBA in digital for the Groupe INSEEC and University of Monaco, and I'm a mentor as well for the students. And in terms of digital transformation, I think in the UK in particular, so I think you have to separate London from the rest of the UK. Of course, the UK is quite a digital, strong performance country, and probably one of the, I think, the second or third in the world in terms of digital kind of integration. But you have still to separate then London from the rest of the country. And of course, we are here in London. London, I would say, that is an exceptional place around the world for digital. I think we have kind of 3 parallel levels in London, I think, especially the last 5 years with the emergence of London as a tech city, because it was always a financial center, now is a tech city as well. And I think the tech city in particular with the media foundations that it has, because it has always some of the top agencies in the world, it made it very strong. And this was actually, it only happened in 5 years old, with 5 years old. I think there's a big change at the moment going on, and let's see what is going to happen with Brexit. I think in one end, there's a fantastic relationship between the corporates, between the tech and the innovation world, and then of course the startup world. And I think on that level, the former British Prime Minister and all this government, they did a fantastic work in terms of integrating technology in the investment. So a lot of people that were investing in commodities or in different areas, they were incentivized to invest in startups, and that created a huge innovative footprint, and that as well brought a lot of money to the startup world and to the innovation side. And that, I think, is something new, because the UK was as well a country that was not very towards risk, and as you know, digital transformation and innovation is all about risk. So I think on that level, the digital transformation, let's put it in London in particular, is quite advanced. I would say that we have quite a huge area of focus that goes from pure digital, let's say, from the relationship between big corporations and companies, so the digital transformation on B2B and B2C, but we have as well in the fintech world, which I think it's probably the most advanced part that London is at the moment. But we have quite a huge holistic way that targets different business that are conscious about innovation, and there's a very fresh environment on that level.
But this culture of innovation that you're talking about, which is certainly very much characterizing the startup scene, is this already has this already reached the corporate world, of the financial sector so far?
It's a very complex question to answer, but I think in one end, yes, partly, of course. I think what happened in the last 5 years, that I think the financial world, especially after the crisis, was conscious that it could not continue the way it is. And of course, you have to look at the facts. If you have companies disrupting your entire business, you have to adapt and do things. So I think there has been a lot of collaboration between big corporations, financial organizations, and the startup world that brought a lot of innovation that was not possible before. So if you look at the quantity of big banks with the innovation labs, and with, for instance, Deloitte, I'm working with Deloitte lab, They have a couple of labs that are investing in startups and they're trying to get these startups into their DNA. The same with Barclays, the same with the HSBC just started recently. So you have big corporations really taking this quite serious. And then you have a lot of new corporations, of course, doing a lot of things. And as well, I think one of the key things for that part of the innovation was that in the last couple of years, a lot of VCs start looking at London in a slightly different way. Because if you go to Silicon Valley, you are literally in a suburb. And you are very dependent of the innovation that comes from abroad. Here in London, you have this kind of fantastic melting pot of people from different locations, and that you have to be innovative by default. And that, I think, made London a special place in the world. I think right now the Brexit might risk that, I hope not, but there's quite a lot of question marks on that, because if you look that this happened in 5 years, this can go on to Berlin very fast, because in 5 years it was mostly about setting up the basis and creating this innovation culture. So I would say that we are kind of in the bridge, but still the culture is here, and I think that culture of innovation is definitely part of the London ecosystem.
But if we look at this evolution, then it's quite characterizing also that certainly we have those external innovation hubs like the startup scene, which is incubated by the big corporate companies to ignite the innovation process within the old-fashioned corporations. At our conference at the Enterprise Digital, we're always talking about new ways of collaboration spaces to be established within the company to ignite the innovation culture within the traditional process-orientated organization. So what is your stake on this? What's the best way?
I think that is critical. I think you cannot lead innovation if it's not from inside. And I think that is partly one of the things that most of the big corporations understood in the last, especially the last 3 to 4 years. And I think what I've been seeing, of course, this is not everything, but in general, there's a tentative from executives, from corporations to be very open-minded. I think there's still, of course, a lot of challenges, especially in the internal innovation and internal education as well. I think the education is particularly important because a lot of corporations, if you are very successful in one area, then you become somehow victim of your own success, and the tendency to innovate is much more difficult because you are making money, so you focus on that. So I think on that level, London has been kind of permeate itself to be open-minded to that. I think in general it's going very well. I think if you go out in London and you just go to meetups, you go to incubators, you go to working places, the quantity of things happening are fantastic. And I'm talking about from big corporations to VCs, to Silicon Valley players coming here, to people from all over the world are very, very conscious about that. So that's actually, I think, the best thing about London. And as well, there's a drive that I think every organization understands that you cannot survive without doing this. And I think that is starting to be, especially on the top level tech and digital and financial companies, they're starting to understand this. Of course, from the theory to the practice, then you have to look at the SMEs, because the UK, for instance, has around over 5 million SMEs, which is massive. And from this SMEs, for instance, I was kind of in shock because I was approached through Intelligent HQ that is right now reaching close to 1 million people per month. And what I understood was that although our content is very digital savvy, I understood that if you go to SME world, most of them are really trying to understand what is digital. So we have still a paradox that is kind of the top level organizations and B2B kind of mainstream companies conscious about this in the startup world, but then you have the real business world that is kind of much lower and still understanding how to cope on that.
If we look at the innovations within the fintech area, we can also summarize this to 2 different stages. So on the first stage or first phase, we had the innovations all around connecting the financial consumers within startups, and then now on the second, adding also artificial intelligence to processes and disrupting again the business models. How far is this from being integrated into the traditional processes within the financial industries?
I think it's not far, it's already there. So I come as well from a background in finance. I worked 5 years for an investment bank, and I'm still very involved. So I think if you look at the moment, the volume of trading around the world, 80% is done by supercomputer algorithms. So we're talking about 80% of the money in the world that is already managed by artificial intelligence. Of course, when it comes to artificial intelligence, you have to separate by layers. So you have like Google is artificial intelligence. I think the point is that how far we're going in the levels of artificial intelligence, because the first stage is mostly patterns organization by algorithms, and then the second stage is when the algorithms go to the point of starting to create insights and create patterns that are much more decision making driven. And of course you have the deep mind, machine learning, and all these kind of things. I'm particularly involved in swarm intelligence, and for instance, if you look at swarm intelligence, so swarm intelligence is artificial intelligence that reproduces ecosystems of nature. Let's say you have the ants, and the ants leave a pheromone if they go from point A to point B. So what is happening right now is that most of the machine-driven artificial intelligence solutions are reproducing nature ecosystem to try to create faster insights. So this will bring two things. In one end, so that's already happening. So financial world, most of the operations are done by artificial intelligence, of course, in a very incipient way. And then I think what we're going to see right now with the emergence of blockchain and the emergence of Internet of Things, or Internet of Everything, is that as the devices start being communicating data between them, and of course we have to always bring the big data concept, we have to understand how the devices will communicate between them, and how we get the insights in terms of data to drive decisions in terms of business, if you look at business. But I think the challenge with artificial intelligence right now, of course, we might think there's a couple of scientists that, and a lot of thought leaders that are already talking that the kind of the state where man and machine are going to integrate, some of them said it would be 2050, but I think it's already now. If we are already in that stage, I think the challenge right now is how are we going to integrate big corporations that have access to data in a way and information that very few, and we're talking from a money perspective, but from a power of data perspective. If you look at, for instance, if you look at that Apple has $225 billion in cash flow, and if you look that the German government has around 150 billion euros, this becomes scary from a pure money perspective, but as well from a data perspective, because Apple has more data about 1 billion people, or at least 600 or 700 billion people, than actually the German government that has data about 80 billion people, and is not integrated data. So in one end, we have, on that part of the artificial intelligence, you have geopolitics, you have financial transactions, and then you have the business that are still trying to make their money. And then as well, if you are a country in Europe, you pay taxes in Europe, but if you are a multinational from Silicon Valley, you can actually play around and different things. So I think on the artificial intelligence, there's a lot of layers, not just from an innovation perspective, but from a perspective of how you get out of taxes, or you pay less taxes. How do you integrate that to improve decision making in boardrooms? And now I think especially blockchain, and that's why I'm very excited, is that as we have all the computers interrelated between them, at the moment, most of the basic computers you use are very basic. But we need to start right now. At the moment, let's say if you look at each of us as an individual, we have around 10 digital footprints. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and so forth. And then we have our country registration number. We have our citizen voting number. So we have around 10, 20 different digitalization identities. And I think the blockchain technology can actually create a digital single place of identity that will create a much easier, transparent, especially the contracts, smart contracts technology, and the artificial intelligence can help a lot on that. Of course, this can create as well a kind of a global authoritarian government if it's managed not correctly. And I think that's the stage we are, because ultimately is not, we cannot continue with all this fragmentation of digital identities, and that's why so much cybersecurity is happening, and at levels that are scary. But I think the artificial intelligence needs to answer this, but in the end of the day, we are already dealing with it. I think right now is how we take the artificial intelligence and use it, first of all, from an ethical perspective, because if you look, cyber hacking is using artificial intelligence to hack governments. If you see that the US government is continuously being hacked by the Russian authorities and in China, and not going to politics purely in terms of cyber hacking, things are already happening very fast. So I would say that we are in that stage that there is need to be kind of a global ethical and legal setup, because at the moment it's so fragmented, and at the same time is a question of ethics, because in the end of the day, artificial intelligence will reproduce humans and it will be part of our evolution. I believe that they are just part of us. So we are already kind of cyber humans, if whether we like it or not, because we wake up with our phones, we go to bed with our phones, and that's part of a process of technology, and that is artificial intelligence as well as evolution.
Great. Thank you for this interview.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.